Hello, and welcome to another episode of This, That, and the Other. I was looking through some old United States Football League programs, better known as the USFL, a league that existed for 3 years, 1983, 85, 83, 84, and 85. And I actually have some memories of going to some of the USFL games. One of the cool things about the USFL was they had some cool uniforms, cool helmets. The Federals had a white helmet with a green and black bird on it, and green jerseys. In the second year, they changed to a silver helmet, which I didn't like as much as the first year helmet. But anyway, I remember going to the first game that the Red Federals played. It was at RFK Stadium. It was cold. It might have been raining. I can't remember, but they were playing the Chicago Blitz, and that was the Blitz were coached by George Allen, the ex-Redskins coach. So it was a big game. That may be the game that had the most attendance that year for the Federals at home. I'm not sure, but I know the game wasn't sold out. But the Blitz were quarterbacked by Greg Landry, and I remember the Federals. They started Ken McQuilkin at quarterback, an ex-Redskin third stringer, who was also with the Atlanta Falcons, and then they ended up putting in Mike Hohensee, a quarterback that they brought in from the University of Minnesota, and he ended up quarterbacking the most of the season for them. I think that year too, they also had ex Steelers quarterback Joe Gilliam. He quarterbacked some of the games for the Federals as well. So they ended up with using three quarterbacks that year. But I remember the game. The Blitz were quick to score a touchdown, and I believe the final score ended up being like 28-7 Chicago Blitz. It was no match for the Federals. And I'm trying to think of that year. I'm trying to remember other games. Oh, I went to another one later on where it was pouring down rain the whole game. It was against the New Jersey Generals, and Herschel Walker was on the Generals. He had signed that multi-million-dollar contract before even finishing his college years at University of Georgia. And I remember with a group of people, and one guy was a running back at McLean High School, and he wanted to go shake hands with Herschel Walker. So we waited. Finally, a bus like a Greyhound or one of these buses showed up, and saw the head coach, Chuck Fairbanks, with a suit on, and him coming out with his wife, and then saw the assistant coaches following him, and then the players, and the guy in our group got to shake hands with Herschel Walker. That's what he wanted to do. And I remember the game. The Generals received the kickoff, and the first play from scrimmage, Herschel Walker ran probably like 89 or 90 yards for a touchdown. First play of the game. Some of the Federals fans were laughing. I mean, the Federals had so many bad things happen with them. They had they lost a lot of games by seven or less points, and there were like 3 or 4 games they could have won in the last minute. It was just unbelievable. This was another game where score was tied, raining hard, and I was thinking, well, this is probably going to overtime because General's place kicker was going to attempt a 50-yard field goal. It's like, I don't think he's going to make that in this rain, but he made the field goal. It was unbelievable, but he made it. And later on in the year, I think the last game of the season, I went with the group, and by then it was like June and gotten hot, and I think the Federals were playing the Philadelphia Stars, as a matter of fact. Baltimore later became the Baltimore Stars, but Federals that were actually towards the end getting on a winning surge, and they actually won that game against the Stars, even though Stars ended up in the championship later at the end of that season, lost to Michigan, but the Stars ended up winning the next 2 USFL championships. And the 1984 season, I only went to one game. Went to one at another one at RFK Stadium, where the Federals were taking on the Chicago Blitz again. And the Chicago Blitz was an entirely different football team from what it was the year before. The doctor that owned the Blitz, I don't know exactly how all that worked, but the owner in Arizona wanted to get out after poor attendance after the first year and losing money, and that doctor that owned the football team, his business was in Arizona. He was a heart surgeon, and he wanted to get closer to home, so it was an opportunity for him to own the franchise in Arizona. And he brought George Allen with him. I don't know if the team, I don't know if the franchise just flip flopped. It might have been a swap, but it seemed like players from Chicago went to Arizona. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Greg Landry also went to Arizona, and a bunch of others. And I remember the Chicago Blitz was coached that year by Marv Levy, the old Chiefs coach, later to become the Buffalo Bills coach. And I remember Vince Evans, the old Chicago Bear, later Oakland Raider quarterback, was a quarterback for the Chicago Blitz, and I think Hohensee was quarterbacking the Federals. Well, I remember that year too. The Federals, after first year, the Birmingham Stallions had signed Reggie Collier, and he was supposed to be their quarterback of the future. But after the season, Birmingham acquired Cliff Stout, who had been with the Steelers, back up to Terry Bradshaw. I guess later on was a starter for the Steelers, and they obtained him, and then they made some trade, and the Federals had Reggie Collier on their teams. I don't remember if it was Reggie Collier or Hohensee that started that game. I think it was Hohensee, but don't remember for sure. But I remember that game too. The Federals had a chance to win the thing, to kick a really short field goal, and watch the ball snap. They snapped the ball over the holder's head. That Chicago jumped on it and recovered, and that ended the game. The Federals ended up losing by a point or 2 points. It was disappointing. It was typical Federals football. Matter of fact, the man that owned the Federals was a DC lawyer, and Ray Yawk had coached the team the first year, and after the first game of the 1984 season, the Federals played an away game against an expansion franchise in Jacksonville. Jacksonville beat them like 50-something to 14. It was a real wipeout. And matter of fact, Ray Yawk was fired after the first game. And I believe one of the men that used to be assistant, maybe receivers coach at Baltimore with the Colts, Dick Bielski, took over the Federals, and they were not that, didn't have that great of a year as well. And I think after that, I think the owner wanted out, and the plan was to move the team to Miami. And I can't remember all the circumstances of it. I think the man that was going to buy the football team expected the next year that the USFL would go into fall play, and I think they stuck with spring, and I think he backed out. He had hired Howard Schnellenberger already out of the University of Miami, and once Howard Schnellenberger realized they weren't going to be in Miami, he didn't want it, and the team ended up in Orlando, or the Orlando Renegades, and Lee Corso coached the Renegades that year. But the next year, the Philadelphia Stars moved to Baltimore. Actually, excuse me, they moved to they couldn't secure a stadium in the city of Baltimore itself. I guess they couldn't work out a deal with Memorial Stadium, maybe because of the Orioles schedule conflicts, maybe, I don't know, but they ended up playing several miles south of Baltimore. As a matter of fact, at Byrd Stadium at the University of Maryland, that's where the Stars played. They were called the Baltimore Stars, and they had the same uniform, same helmet, and they were coached by the same coach, Jim Mora, who later coached the Saints and Colts in the NFL. But anyway, I went to a few games where the Stars, the first game I saw where the Stars were playing the Arizona Outlaws. By then, Arizona was the Outlaw. We had been Wranglers a year before, and the Outlaws moved from Oklahoma to Arizona. Quite a lot of complicated switch arounds in the USFL in those 3 years. But I wanted to see Doug Williams play, and well, Doug Williams was injured. Arizona's quarterback was Rick Johnson, some backup quarterback. He played in the game. I remember the Stars won that game, and I remember going to another one. They were playing the San Antonio Gunslingers, and Rick Neuheisel was quarterback of the Gunslingers. I remember him throwing a touchdown right before the half. And Federals won that one, and then they, I believe the last game that I went to was when the Federals played Tampa Bay Bandits, and their coach was Steve Spurrier. Later on, coach Florida to the national championship, and the Redskins. And he's now a coach of South Carolina. But the Stars won that one too, and they kind of had an up and down season, but they were good enough to make it into the playoffs. And then the surge began. They beat the New Jersey Generals. They beat some other team and advanced to the finals against the Oakland Invaders. I think they ended up beating the Invaders maybe by 2 points or something. They ended up winning the championship again. After 1985 season, the league folded. But those are the memories I have of going to those football games. They were fun times, and I wish the league could have hung on longer. So, like I said, I thought they had some cool uniforms, cool helmets, but there have been several leagues that have tried, challenging the NFL. You had the World Football League back in the 1970s. It only lasted a year and a half. They ended up folding before the second season ended up ending. I did it one of my shows about the World Football League, as a matter of fact. There's been the XFL. That league only lasts a year. I think I only watched one game of it. I couldn't get into it. I believe their failure to secure a television contract the next year caused them to fold. And there was another WLAF, World League of American Football. I don't know if it's kind of like maybe a equivalent to the farm clubs that they have in baseball. But they tried that. They even had a team in London. I remember London Monarchs. I watched one game of that, and I couldn't get into it. I don't know how many seasons they lasted. Maybe at least two, maybe a third. I can't remember. But that also didn't work. And then there was another more recent football league that maybe had 4 or 8 teams. Not very many. But that also I don't even remember what that was called. But that also didn't make it. But yeah, people have tried putting together football leagues to challenge the NFL, and it just doesn't work. I was trying to think. The AFL was the only one that really, American Football League was the only one that really gave the NFL run for its money, because at the time there were less football teams, and AFL had teams in cities the NFL didn't have. They ended up merging. The leagues merged in, I think, 1970. But that's basically the memories I have of going to USFL football games. Like I said, they were fun to go to, and I kind of wish that league was still around sometimes, just because of all the cool uniforms they had, and the fact that they played football in the spring, and it was cool to see that, because after you watch the Super Bowl, you go through that drought where you have no football, and it's like, oh my gosh, and can't wait for the next football season to start. But anyway, I wanted to share these memories with you, and as always, thanks for watching.